All right, welcome into episode 2 of the DAV Podcast. We are here with you. It's Dan Claskins and Ashley Burns taking you around DAV, talking about our mission of helping veterans, and really great episode lined up here for the second podcast. Of course, if you're just joining in, we invite you to check out the podcast anytime. You can go to our website, dav.org/podcast. You can now subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher too. And this episode, a lot of different things to get into. And Ashley, I know you're like me, excited. We had a good first episode, still plenty more ahead here on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have so much more to talk about and so much more to bring. I feel like our content is just kind of getting ahead of us here. So we have so much more to talk about. I'm very excited.
Yeah, we're going to be cranking out some episodes. We appreciate your feedback too, especially out there on iTunes or Spotify, Google Play. If you want to leave us a review, we really appreciate that and help us spread the word. On today's show, we are going to focus on a number of different areas. It's National Volunteer Month. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We've got the month of the military child as well. We're going to hear from Cole, a 13-year-old. He's been involved plenty here with our Camp Corral. He and his mother, Jennifer, coming and talking about the impact that's had on them. We're going to hear as well from Woody Williams, a DAV lifetime member, a Medal of Honor recipient, a World War II veteran, some exciting stuff there. But before we get too far into any of it, as I said, we do want to top off here at DAV, our Voluntary Services Department, helping veterans in a number of ways, and asking you if you're interested in helping out and giving some of your time to help some of our veterans. Check out volunteerforveterans.org there. You can create a profile. We can connect you to some different opportunities going on. And very important, Ashley, that give back. This is a great way to offer some service to those that serve our nation, and a lot of good opportunities out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Volunteer for Veterans is such an important program. I mean, it's really giving people an opportunity to use their time and talents and abilities to give back to veterans and caregivers, which are some of our unsung heroes in the community, people that we really need to embrace with our community and kind of wrap our arms around them to make sure that they know they're appreciated and that they're supported.
One of our big legislative issues that we are talking about here at DAV, I know Commander Nixon, when his congressional testimony before Congress took place back in February, one of the issues he talked about, and we talked about on our last episode of providing an update on, was our Blue Water Navy vets. What is the latest going on there, Ashley?
Yeah, Dan, so there's some really big news around this. It's very exciting. If you'll recall, due to a misinterpretation of the law back in the 90s, veterans who didn't have boots on the ground, so to speak, in Vietnam have been in this battle with the VA for presumption of Agent Orange exposure. There's something like an estimated 90,000 veterans who were likely exposed to the herbicide through drinking water aboard ships off the coast of Vietnam, but they and DAV's advocacy team here in Washington have been in this major fight ever since to get these veterans the same presumption of exposure that covers illnesses believed to be caused by Agent Orange. So here in the past few weeks, we've seen some major developments moving in the right direction. And here to tell us a little bit more about that is DAV's Assistant National Legislative Director, Shane Learman, who is our resident Blue Water Navy guru.
The Federal Circuit Court in January of this year made the decision in Procopio v. Wilkie to determine that the waters offshore of Vietnam were included as serving in the Republic of Vietnam. So that was on January 29th. Since that time, the VA originally indicated that they may be appealing. However, they did file for a stay on all decisions. The court turned that stay down. And then I believe on March 22nd, the Procopio decision became mandated as a formal decision. So currently, Procopio is the law of the land. So if anybody actually served in the waters offshore, they would be considered as exposed to Agent Orange and the presumptive diseases as it stands right now. The last day for the VA to appeal is April 29th. All bets are off. They ran out of their time to appeal, and Procopio will continue to be the controlling factor for Blue Water Navy veterans who served in the waters offshore of Vietnam. So yeah, after April 29th and they don't appeal, that's the way it's going to be. However, there is legislation pending right now in the House of Representatives, H.R. 299, and essentially what that'll do is add a little bit larger of a exposure area based on grid coordinates and locations. So what that'll do is add a little bit larger of an area and potentially add 13,000 additional veterans who may have been exposed in that area. So the legislation is still pending, even though Procopio does really change things for us, the legislation would even go farther. So it's important that we still get the legislation passed.
We know that this has been an important issue for many of you listening. Those maybe not as familiar, you can certainly visit DAV.org, get the latest news there. And then it was also an important issue, as I mentioned, when Commander Dennis Nixon gave his testimony before a joint House and Senate Affairs Committee talking about blue water. And here was some of that.
We also need Congress to finally end the injustice that exists for blue water Navy veterans of the Vietnam War. In January, an appellate court ruled that Congress clearly meant to include blue water Navy veterans for benefits related to Agent Orange. It is not yet known if VA will appeal this decision, and we have urged them to accept the ruling. However, regardless of whether it is appealed, Congress should still move forward and pass blue water Navy regulation.
Commander Nixon also spoke and addressed some of the biggest challenges veterans are facing today during his testimony, such as access to quality health care, expanding support for caregivers, and equal access for women's veterans. In addition, he spoke to the core of DAV's mission.
Mr. Chairman, while much of our focus in Washington is on VA programs and policies, DAV's core mission around the country involves providing direct service to veterans and their families. DAV represents over 1 million disabled veterans free of charge. Just last year, our National Service Program filed over 200,000 new claims for benefits, more by far than any other organization. Our Disaster Relief Program granted more than $1.2 million to veterans impacted by hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, volcanoes, and fires. The 23,000 DAV and DAV auxiliary volunteers provided more than 1.3 million volunteer hours to hospitalized veterans in VA facilities, saving taxpayers more than $33.5 million. In 2018, DAV volunteer drivers spent over 1.4 million hours transporting veterans to 630,000 VA medical appointments. In less than 5 years, our National Employment Program has helped over 130,000 veterans and their spouses receive job offers. And DAV's Charitable Service Trust has awarded more than $112 million in grants to organizations supporting veterans over the past 3 decades. That's who the DAV is, and that's what we do.
If you'd like to check out the complete testimony of Commander Nixon, I invite you to check out DAV's YouTube page. There you can see the complete testimony, a ton more going on around that, and it is very impactful. And a lot of these issues, they just don't go away. And actually, I know with our legislative team, they adopt certain things every year, and this year, certainly a very important core of issues that we are trying to tackle here at DAV.
Yeah, absolutely. Women veterans and Blue Water Navy veterans, we're so excited to be able to expand the scope of what we do and to continue to push for those issues. If you want to visit davcan.org, you can learn a little bit more about that. Make sure you're up to date and up to speed with what we're advocating for.
Now that we've caught you up on some of the latest news around the organization, it's time for our veteran spotlight. And actually, I'm really excited about our veteran today, a DAV life member and a World War II hero, if you will, Woody Williams.
Yeah, this is a great story. DAV is so fortunate to count among its members Medal of Honor recipient and Marine Corps veteran Woody Williams. He has just an incredible story, absolutely an American hero. And he also has some really great perspective about why it's so important to stay connected with the veteran community once you've left the military. So here is our own Brian Lett with Woody Williams.
There were 3 Marine divisions scheduled to go to Iwo Jima. The 4th and 5th Marine divisions were the first ones to go in. We were in the 3rd division, and we were a reserve division. On the way there, they told us we'd probably never get off ship because the island was only 2.5 miles wide, 5 miles long, and they probably would never need us. The campaign would probably last 3 to 5 days, and then we'd go back to Guam from whence we came. And of course, we had no intelligence on the island, so they didn't know what they were talking about. But after the first day, we got notice that night, about midnight, that we were going to go in because we'd lost so many individuals on the beach the first day. We tried to get in the second day, riding Higgins boats around in circles all day long, waiting for somebody on the island to say, come on in. They called him a beach master, but we never got a signal. So we went back aboard ship, stayed another night, and I've jokingly said, I think we were the only Marine division in the history of the Marine Corps that got steak and eggs twice before you went into combat. But we did finally get in the next day about noon. And when we got there, our job became to split the island. The first obstacle was the airfield, because the airfield was protected by a great number of pillboxes. We call them bunkers today. There were pillboxes then, and they were reinforced concrete, and hitting them with a bazooka or a piece of artillery wouldn't do anything to them except maybe knock some holes in it maybe. But we couldn't break through because they had all the advantage. We're in open territory, they're in an enclosed structure. So that's where the flamethrowers came into use. I had 6 flamethrower guys with me when we hit the beach. After the first day, I didn't have any. So never did know whether they were killed or wounded. It's just one of those things that happened and you never know what happened. And we attempted several times during the day to break through this line of pillboxes, and we had lost a tremendous number of Marines. My commanding officer was down to himself and 2 officers, and most of our squad leaders were gone. So he called a meeting to gather in a big shell crater. And at that point in time, he asked me if I thought I might be able to do something. I was the only flamethrower guy left in my company, and could I do something about those pillboxes with a flamethrower, because we had not attempted that at that point. And I don't know what I said. The other guy said my response was, I'll try. So he gave me 4 Marines to protect me as I would be working toward the pillbox. They're to shoot at the aperture in the pillbox as I'm trying to get to it, close enough to get flame in there. So during the course of about 4 hours, I was able to eliminate the enemy within 7 of them, and that opened a path so we could break through. And once we got behind them, then we had the advantage. They couldn't shoot at us from back of the pillbox. And that what happened, that my commanding officer and my fellow Marines testified and witnessed what went on, and he recommended me for the Medal of Honor because of that action. There's a lot about that day I don't remember. And lost 2 Marines, 2 of those individuals of the 4 that he had assigned to me to protect me, they gave their lives that day. So I have always said, once I realized the significance of the Medal of Honor, I'd never even heard of it before. I didn't know such a thing existed. But once I received it and then recognized or realized the significance of it, I have said from day one, from that day on, that I wear it in their honor, not mine. They gave their lives for it.
That's amazing. When you talk about going up and down that island with that flamethrower, explain a little bit to me about just the sheer weight. I mean, that thing was 70 pounds.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you weighed at the time, but
150.
So, I mean, tell us a little bit about just the physical requirements to be running around like that.
Well, you crawl more than you walk. Number one, you make a good target if you are standing up, because you've got this 3 tanks hanging on your back that are perfectly obvious of what they are. And the Japanese had a tremendous fear of fire. I've been told that. And I guess history shows that, because if in their home communities the housing was very flimsy, not built out of real strong structured stuff, so if they got a fire in a community, it just absorbed the community. They didn't have any way of stopping it. So they had a fear of fire. So the flamethrower itself was one of the principal targets. If they saw somebody with a flamethrower, they want to get that individual. Why they didn't get me, I have no answer. But I didn't get hit that day at all. Got hit later, but that day they missed me all the way around.
What were your tactical challenges? I mean, as you're trying to advance up this island and clear out these pillboxes with a flamethrower, I'm assuming you're having to retreat or find another location to refuel, resupply.
No,
how much did that play in, or how did that work?
Yeah. No, once a flamethrower once you run out of air or fuel, and usually you would run out of, the way we worked it, you'd run out of air before you'd run out of fuel. Well, if you got fuel and no air to force it, it's not going to go anywhere. So once you reach that point, then you just peel out of the flamethrower, drop it, and leave it lay, because at that point in time it's useless. And that's when you try to find another flamethrower. We had charged or supplied, fixed up probably 40 flamethrowers before we left Guam, so that we would have a large supply if they were needed. But they were in company supply, and this is one of the things that's bothered me all my life, and I've talked to professionals about it. They don't have an answer either. Why can't I remember going back and getting the other 5 flamethrowers? I don't remember that. Maybe I didn't want to, I don't know, but I have no memory of that. But I know I had to have additional flamethrowers because I used 6 of them total. I've asked psychologists, why can't I remember that? They don't have the answer. You know? If you don't want to remember something, you won't. Well, that wasn't important at the moment, I guess. So.
I can only imagine the heightened sense of awareness and like where you're at, you know, mentally and how you're functioning at those times. Like it's probably just such a blur.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that I'm sure there's hours of that day that you know, just aren't remembered because you were going through almost muscle memory, like you were just kind of doing it. But also, February 23rd, 1945, the day of all this, there was another, obviously, what became a huge kind of national iconic event with the flag raising on Mount Suribachi. Right. If you don't mind, just briefly explain kind of where you were at and how you were come to see the flag and just kind of what that meant to you on that day, or how that was, what it was like to be there live and in person during that event.
We were right at the edge of the first airfield in preparation to cross the airfield. They didn't have any pillboxes between the beach and the airfield, but they had the pillboxes beyond the airfield. And the pillboxes had been built primarily to protect the airfield, to protect the planes that were on the airfield. Of course, we'd bombed the airfield to where it was absolutely useless, and all their planes were gone. We were right at the edge in preparation to cross the airfield when they raised the flag. And I didn't know anything about that until Marines around me began yelling and screaming and firing their weapons into the air, saying something about a flag. And jokingly, I have said, I think I had my head buried in the sand, but I really didn't know what was going on at that particular moment. What I was doing, I don't know, except that I realized that something was going on, and so I turned around, and that was my first view of the second flag, the big flag. And I began doing the same thing they were doing, just joining in and firing my weapon into the air. So it was kind of a celebration at that particular moment.
As you said initially, the intel was they're saying he thought it'd be a 3 to 5 day battle.
Right.
How did the morale of the Marines there, how did you guys stay resilient, get up each morning and do what you had to do in something that turned out to be a 5-week campaign and not 3 to 5 days? So what was the mental fatigue of it? What were you guys thinking as far as what you were expecting and then to what you eventually had to live out?
Well, the individuals, the Marines in my unit, C Company, 21st Regiment, we had been in one combat. So we had some experience of being in combat. So whatever fear we had probably existed on the first one. This one was just another operation. There's always anxiety about it because you don't know whether you're going to live or die. There's no way you can know that, of course. But the total fear, or the fear of control, as I called it, that wasn't present. Everybody just realized you got another job to do. So we didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about, well, I may not make it through this one, or I probably won't live through this kind of. We didn't do that kind of thing. It just wasn't suitable. Since we had no intelligence and they couldn't tell us anything about how many were there. My concept, and I can only speak for myself, was a little island like that, there couldn't be very many people on there. When we just had taken Guam, where, good grief, it was 19 miles from one coastline to the other, and now this was only 2.5 miles. We couldn't figure out why we were even going.
Now, about 2 weeks after that, March 6th, I believe is the day that you were wounded by, I think, shrapnel to your legs. you obviously got a Purple Heart for that. If you don't mind, just briefly, if you don't mind, tell the story of how you actually were injured and then how you maintained, because you did not, from my understanding, leave or go anywhere. You fought the remaining, what I think was 3 weeks almost of the battle at that time. So I'm curious if you don't mind explaining how you got hurt and then how you persevered through that to eventually take the island.
I think the record shows, and I've used these figures because somebody else used them, but when we hit the beach, we had 278 individuals in our company. On March the 5th, when we were taken off of the line to be able to shave and wash in our helmets and get a break, and we had 17. We got a new supply of Marines. We were told that they came right out of boot camp, that as soon as they finished boot camp, they sent them overseas, and they joined us on the day of the 5th. Many of them had never seen or operated a machine gun. They didn't know what a flamethrower was. They just were not trained and didn't have time to train them, I guess. So we spent most of the night of the 5th working with those new individuals because we're going into battle the next morning. We already knew that. We'd already been told we're going to move forward the next morning. And so we worked with them most of the night to give them some idea about combat, how to move forward and find some place to land when you don't move until you know where you're going, that type information. We were moving forward the next morning, and of course they were shooting at us with machine guns, Namboos, and dropping mortars in on us. I had been in a shell hole. I jumped up and ran to another dugout place. It wasn't a shell crater, didn't look to me like a shell crater, but at least it had been dug out, whether that was by a piece of artillery or something, and I scooted into that hole. And instead of diving in, I scooted in. I could get down in the hole pretty well except my left leg. There just wasn't room for all of me, so my left leg was still sticking up. Whether it was their artillery or our artillery, I never did know. But a piece came in and caught me in the thigh, inside thigh, and I naturally the first words out of my mouth were a corpsman, as loud as I could yell. And so he came and dug the piece of shrapnel out and put a sulfur powder on it, put a pressure bandage on it, and tagged me. They put a tag on you if you were to be medically evacuated. Whether you were being carried out or walked out, you still had to have that tag. So he put a tag on me and told me, you got to go back to the aid station. And I said, I'm not going. And he said, and we'd been told this very strongly, whatever the corpsman says, you do, period. He's in charge at that moment. And he said, well, you got to go because I put a tag on you, or you got a tag on you. Well, I reached up and tore the tag off, and I said, I don't have a tag on me. Well, I will not repeat the names that he called me and how stupid I was, but I stayed because we were so short of people. I had several people that were still that I was still responsible for, so I'm not going to go, and I didn't. I came home in 1945 in West Virginia. We had one VA facility in the whole state. That was here in Huntington, West Virginia. The rest of the state had no one, nowhere to go except veterans organizations, DAV, VFW, American Legion. Those were the only people that you could relate to at all. When I was offered the opportunity to work for the VA, I had never heard of the VA. I didn't even know such a place existed. But when they told me that I would be assisting veterans and survivors, families, with benefits that the government had provided for them, that struck a chord to me. So, and one of the other things that influenced me was they told me that I would be earning $2,980 a year. I had never seen or heard tell of so much money. That was going to be a fortune to me. So I said, okay, I'm in for this. And I guess I've always had a desire, and maybe it's beyond a desire, to help people. It's just one of those things that I guess I was raised that way. We had a large family. There were 11 in my family, so you helped each other. You had to work together. We ran a farm. We had to work together to help each other do whatever had to be done. So I think I always had that down somewhere, that to serve somebody would be certainly a pleasure. And then when I got involved to see the benefits that were provided, but the service for those benefits didn't exist except through veterans organizations. And without veterans organizations existing in this country, we wouldn't have near the benefits that we have. Congress just wouldn't have done it if the veterans organizations like DAV hadn't pushed them to do those things. So that became very important to me. And I've been very active in legislative matters ever since, because somebody has got to start the ball rolling and have it come to fruition. So those things have always appealed to me, and we have benefits available today for severely handicapped that would have never been there if it hadn't have been for DAV. I've belonged to all of them. I've been active in many of them. But you can't be active in all of them. But I have been active in DAV. I think we're following a trend that was there right after World War II. World War II, we probably didn't have the knowledge of the existence of organizations as a whole. We knew in our community we had a VFW, DAV, American Legion Post, or something like that. But we didn't have any understanding of what it meant nationally. But today, it does have a great meaning. If we didn't have the organizations in Washington, D.C., like the DAV, that every day deals with the congressional people who have to enact the benefits, the laws that provide the benefits, if we didn't have those, then what would happen? Nothing, mainly. So I would hope that the younger Afghanistan and Iraq veterans would, as they go along, they're going to grow in age and experience, and once they get their families started and get settled in their jobs, I hope they will come into these organizations, because if they don't, they are not going to be able to receive the same consideration or the benefits for them that has been provided for veterans before that. So I hope they will become active. And right now they're not. And I can certainly understand that, because I was in that boat for a while. Getting married, new job, trying to raise a family, trying to buy a home, and all of those other things were occupying all the time that I had. But eventually I realized if we don't belong to these organizations, if they don't have membership, they're not going to be effective.
Great stuff there with Woody Williams and Brian Lett. Man, it gives me goosebumps hearing him talk about those experiences. And it's so few World War II veterans alive to tell those stories today, and definitely enjoy hearing them. So check out more of his interview, and you can also check that out on the YouTube page there. So now we're going to talk to another topic here that's important to us, and DAV is once again joining with Camp Corral to provide a unique and fun camp experience to help our kids. This summer, more than 3,300 children of wounded, injured, ill, or fallen veterans will be attending a free week of Camp Corral throughout the nation. DAV allocates $600,000 a year through their Just Be Kids scholarship program. That sends 1,000 kids to camp. Children enjoy the opportunity to build friendships, grow in confidence, and have fun. In this episode of the DAV podcast, we meet 13-year-old Cole and his mother, Jennifer. They sat down with our own Brian Lett to talk about the challenges their family has faced and how these camps have made a huge impact.
Hey, thanks, Dan. As you mentioned, it's Brian Lett here at DAV, and we have some very special guests with us. One, thank you for coming. I have Jennifer, her 13-year-old son, Cole. If you don't mind, Jennifer, who is the wife of Army veteran Steve, if you don't mind, just take us through his career in the Army and then how he was injured.
He served Close to 30 years. Yeah, 30 years. He's medically retired now. I believe he joined in 85.
Well, he's a part of Desert Storm as well, correct?
Correct. Desert Storm, Bosnia, Nicaragua, and then
Afghanistan,
Iraq, Afghanistan twice. Mm-hmm.
So he's got some tread on those Army tires.
Yeah. Those boots are worn out.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, I know obviously he sustained a traumatic brain injury, and can you take our audience through what you know of that experience, how he got injured, and then kind of the trickle effect, if you will, and the effects that had on your family? As before I go any further, she also does have a daughter, Sydney. So Jennifer has been asked to do quite a bit as far as not only taking care of her husband, but doing that as well as juggling raising two young children. But before we go too much down that, just explain a little bit to the audience how he was injured and then how that affected your family.
His convoy was hit by a
IED.
Thank you, Cole.
You're welcome.
It was actually a VBED, vehicle-borne explosive device, and he sustained a head injury, and he has significant post-traumatic stress disorder.
I'll cut in here just for a second. For those of you that may not know, when she says a vehicle-borne IED, basically they take a vehicle, they fill it up with a bunch of explosives, and they just ram it into the convoy. It's kind of like a suicide bomber, so to speak. That's what happened to your husband, Steve. My understanding is this vehicle was tossed about 100 yards, and he was not actually the vehicle that I believe took the main hit. That was unfortunately a vehicle, I believe, behind him. How did you get the news, and what was your first reaction to that?
He actually called. He called me from when back on base, and he just said, I don't know if you've kind of heard a trickle down, something happened, but I'm all right. And but when he called, he was just kind of
Shaken.
in a fog. He was it's kind of everything was really slow. He had a really bad headache. It was just it wasn't like him. And I remember it took about 3 weeks for him to finally start talking at a normal rate and for his headache to subside some.
From my understanding, there was a promise that he had made to, I believe, one of his fellow soldiers' family, who was unfortunately and tragically on the vehicle that was hit. I know that affected him as well in a lot of ways. I think that can obviously come with a lot of guilt, but it's obviously outside of his control. How did that, though, play into some of his struggles, if you will, reintegrating back home once he was back stateside?
Before they deployed, he promised this soldier's father that he would take care of him and bring him back home safely. And unfortunately, that sometimes isn't the promise that you can make, but he made it, and he did everything he could to keep his guys safe. The event happened, and he had a really hard time once he came home dealing with that, knowing that some guys kind of quote unquote under his watch were injured, and that he wasn't able to fulfill that promise.
No, I don't want to bring that up to give anybody the wrong impression. Obviously, when we get deployed, we all want to bring everybody back home. Unfortunately, it's beyond all our control, or, we'd be out of Iraq and Afghanistan with 0 casualties. Unfortunately, we're not in control of every situation and every scenario. But I was just curious from the mental side. That's a lot to carry with you, and it can definitely play with your emotions and impact maybe even some of the decisions you will make as things come up in life. But I want to get to the heart of it. I mean, he gets home. You're raising 2 young kids. How did that impact your day-to-day life back home with trying to do what's right by your husband, Steve, as well as help alleviate some of his symptoms, help him get through day-to-day life? But at the same time, you're raising 2 young kids that need a lot of attention. So from a family perspective, even perhaps a caregiver perspective, how would you describe that experience, and what were some of your biggest obstacles?
It was overwhelmingly difficult.
I can only imagine.
I didn't have family support. I was
By yourself?
For the most part by myself. Out in the community, it wasn't like we were on the base, so I didn't have that kind of structure and support. I did the best I could.
No, of course you did, obviously. And then, not to jump too far ahead, we're actually wanting to talk a lot about Camp Corral. That camaraderie is something that not just you would need, and Steve, but also, as we've mentioned, your kids. So Cole, if you don't mind, we're going to kick it over here to you for a little bit.
Okay.
Camp Corral, which those of you who may not know, DAV has partnered with Golden Corral for a long time. Golden Corral started Camp Corral, which is a summer camp for kids of military children or have military parents that are serving.
For the 9th week and all the other weeks before that. So
Let's have the expert tell us.
So the 9th week is for people with their moms or dads that went into the army or still are or got back and retired. And the other 8 weeks are just for other people who aren't military families.
What was the first year that Cole went to camp?
2015.
Okay. So have you gone every year since?
Yeah.
Get better and better?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what we want to hear. How did you hear about Camp Corral, and how did you get involved?
I believe it was through a support group that I am a part of called Hearts of Valor. And at some point they shared that with us. So I looked it up and applied, and thankfully he was accepted. What were some of the struggles you were seeing in Cole, and how have you seen camp help alleviate some of those? Not necessarily a cure-all, but how have you seen that kind of change his mindset? He's had a lot of struggles through his life. He has celiac disease, so he's always been on a restricted diet, gluten, dairy, soy, and egg-free. He, as a result of that, is somewhat small for his age, and so he's struggled with that, his self-confidence in that area. He has ADHD, so he struggles with aspects of ADHD as well. So he's just very... he was very critical of himself. His self-esteem was pretty poor. He just didn't feel like he was measuring up to his peers, and then top that off with living with a dad who has the struggles that he has, made it really difficult on him. Not to get too personal, but some of the struggles that Steve did have back home, if you can explain briefly just what some of those were and how you think those may have affected your son Cole and daughter Sydney. I very vividly remember Sydney talking to me. I'm trying to think how old she was. I think she was 4 or 5. I remember her clearly saying, she said, "Nice daddy left and mean daddy came home." And that was her way of sharing that with me and trying to express how she felt. Cole was so young at that point that all he knew was dad after deployment. He didn't know dad prior to. Cole, were you 2 years old? Was that right? In that 2-year-old ballpark when Steve got hurt? I was pregnant at the time. It was the very end of my pregnancy with Cole, and I had polyhydramnios. I had contractions all the time, and Steve, I believe, was at Fort Bragg at that point, getting ready to pre-deployment phase. I had Cole early. He was in the NICU, and so they let him come home from the pre-deployment from Fort Bragg until he got out of the NICU, and then he went back. So he was an infant when Steve left. He deployed to Afghanistan. Things were so difficult at home. I packed the kids up, and my stepdad helped us move back to Kentucky to stay with our family for about 6 months. So Cole was 15, 16 months old when Steve returned. No, that's obviously extremely rough. I can't imagine. A toddler, basically, with severe GI problems, and a child that screamed all the time and puked all the time, and and Steve walking into that kind of situation, it was really, really difficult. That's actually took me right to where I wanted to ask you. Steve coming home, having experienced what he had experienced, coming into that house, as you said, with a 14, 15-month-old son, who is, like most 14 or 15-year-olds, Cole, we're not picking on you, may cry a lot. My son does all the time. Yeah. How much did that complicate the day-to-day life for your family? Not just you, but obviously Cole and Steve as well, and Sydney. Significantly. Yeah. Do you have, was there a moment that stuck out to you where you're like, okay, I got to take charge of this situation. I want to find solutions and how I can improve what's going on in my house? It was just
there.
Pretty much horrible from day one, to be honest. And no, that makes sense. I mean, I can't imagine what was all on your shoulders. How would you explain, Cole, your first camp? How excited were you, and how did it meet what you were hoping to get out of it? What did you expect?
I mean, I wasn't really that excited because I didn't really like going anywhere or anything.
Had you camped much before it?
No, okay. Not at all. This is like the first camp I've been to like ever, and I didn't really expect much from it. And then when I got there, I wasn't excited. And then when I came home, just like, oh my gosh, this is like the best that I've ever been to, or the best camp I've been to, because it was the first one, so I was really happy.
No, that's exactly what we want to hear, and that's exactly the point of the camp, Cole. So I'm thrilled that that was the experience you had. Did you make any friends at that first camp that you still talk to?
Yeah,
Yeah?
quite a bit.
What about your follow-on camps?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Cole, was the biggest advantage for you to have gone through this camp? Have you noticed any differences in yourself?
Yeah, quite a lot. Like in the beginning, before I ever went there, I'm just like, I just don't want to do anything. I'm like bored and lazy and stuff. And now I'm like active there.
Good. We can't have bored, lazy 10 to 13-year-olds. We got to get you active and staying out there and continuing to learn and experience life. From a mother's perspective, Jennifer, what have you noticed in your son, Cole, having attended, was it 3 camps now?
15.
Sydney's saying 4. We'll go with 4.
He's done it 4 times.
Okay.
4 times.
Have you noticed any significant difference in Cole's, whether it's confidence or his demeanor or...
He looks forward to it every year. When I talk to him about it, you can see his grin right now. He smiles. He absolutely loves it. I've noticed that it definitely improved his self-confidence. He was able to try things that he never thought he could. He kind of, at home, he kind of goes from the kid who, has some struggles to now when he's at camp, he's the first one to stand up and volunteer to clean up. He's the first one to stand up and sit with someone who is homesick.
Like first year there.
Yeah.
Don't know what to do.
So you're a leader now.
Yeah.
You're experienced.
The second year I went there, I got the honor cup, and
Hey, what'd that mean to you?
a lot.
Yeah?
It meant I didn't really expect getting that because I didn't know if I was like being honest, caring, responsible, or respective. I just did like what I had to do pretty much.
You did what you thought was right.
Yeah.
And I think your own experience probably taught you what some of those kids were going through. And I think that probably instinctively gave you a pretty good idea of what they were searching for and what you could help them with. So what was that like from, the mother's perspective to see that bestowed upon your son?
Oh my gosh, my heart melted.
I know you can't see her, but it's all over her face.
I was so excited for him and proud of him for being a good kid.
Well, with that in mind, and also for any kids out there that are listening and you get to Camp Corral, you can potentially take home the Honor Camper Award as well. But in Cole's honor, we're going to express upon any kids listening the value of this award and why you should achieve to obtain it.
So the letter from his camp counselor on the back of his Honor Camper Award says, Cole, I can't put into words how honored and pleased I am to give you your Honor Camper. You are the kind of camper that comes once in a lifetime. You embody everything it means to be an Honor Camper. You are my very last Honor Camper, and I can't think of anyone else I'd rather give this to. Your kind heart and gentle soul gleams through in every tiny action of every day. You are a wonderful, wonderful person. Never lose your kind ways and childish spark. I hope that we run into each other another point in our lives. Let your light shine. Camp Ernst and Love, James Hummeldorf.
Hey, that's beautiful. Well-earned, well-deserved. And in just a few years, Cole, when you go there and you're a counselor, you're going to get to hand this award out, and I look forward to seeing what you write. What was your experience with the camp counselors there? How would you describe their interaction with you?
The counselors help you get through harder times and notice more about you than the kids, really, because the kids don't really want to pay attention too much to you. And then there's the camp counselors, which help you through the times that you don't feel good or don't want to be there.
Have you given any consideration? You're a teenager now. You're 13. Not too long. You're going to be eligible to be one of these Camp Corral camp counselors. Have you thought about that?
Since I got the honor camp, pretty much, I've always wanted to be a camp counselor.
There you go. There you go.
And then, I think last year they gave me this badge that says future camp counselor.
So they know it too, huh?
Yeah. And I really want to be one because it looks fun.
Yeah, no, one thing, I've been fortunate enough to go to some of these camps, and that's been a reoccurring theme in my experience is what Cole's echoing. A kid will go through the camp, see the value of it, see the experiences, and then want to give back and get back involved. And Cole, that's wonderful. I think that's what it's all about. And I think that speaks volumes to just how valuable the camp is. If you went there and didn't get out of it what you needed or didn't make you feel better as a young man and improved and more confident, you wouldn't go back and be involved. So I think that's awesome. through DAV's Just Be Kids program, where we raise about $600,000 a year to send 1,000 kids to camp. You were explaining just not too long ago, Jennifer, that Cole can sometimes be, I think, apprehensive or a little nervous about the departure day, if you will, from home to go to Camp Ernst and Camp Corral. What's he like when he gets home compared to when he's leaving?
For a day or two, he kind of lays in bed and cries, and I thought he was just sad for any number of reasons, but it's because he wants to be back at camp. He misses it so bad, so badly that he wants to be there.
24/7 all day.
Yeah, and so
we have to raise more money.
Yeah.
So I think that speaks volumes to how impactful it is for him.
No, I think that actually
And the
paints...
other campers, too.
Got it, Cole. And I think that actually paints a very accurate picture of the benefits of this. I think all kids, don't feel bad, Cole, all kids are a little apprehensive leaving home. It's the experience you have when you leave that matters most. And if you come home wanting to stay there 24/7, I think that sums it up. From the time Steve got home, and this has changed the topic just a little, what improvements have you seen in him, and how has his relationship with Cole here evolved?
I would say time has helped heal some of the wounds, or at least helped him be able to cope more. I also believe some of it is just maturity with Cole and age and just getting older and having more things in common with each other. It's gotten better.
That's the goal. Better, little by little, every day, day in, day out. Improvement is the goal. Is it something that you would recommend? How valuable do you think it is, and would you actually just recommend it to people to get
absolutely.
involved? Yeah.
Any military family that I come across that has children, I always make sure that they know about it. Many families have taken the opportunity to check it out and have applied for their children as well. It's amazing.
Other than that, again, I want to thank you both for coming. Cole, thank you. Jennifer, thank you. And obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Steve for his service and for all that you've done to keep your family on the tracks. So keep it up. Great work, and thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, too.
Oh, stories like that just warm my heart. It's such an important part of what we do. Camp Corral is really such a great program and really helps to establish that sense of normalcy for military and veteran kids. And another area that we know that sense of normalcy is really so critical is for veterans moving out of the military and back into the civilian workforce. So DAV co-hosts about 140 career fairs each year with our partner Recruit Military. And you can see a complete listing of all of our upcoming events at jobs.dav.org. But right now, we'll take a listen in with National Employment Director Jeff Hall, who sat down with our own Dan Clare to talk a little bit about DAV's employment program and the valuable role it plays in a veteran's transition back to civilian life.
The transition to civilian life is really not complete for veterans until they have found a way to take care of themselves, to take care of their families, until they're empowered with a good job if they're able to work. Joining us today is Jeff Hall, DAV's National Director of Employment. And Jeff's here to tell us a little bit about some of the career fairs coming up. Jeff, DAV does a lot of these career fairs, right?
125, 126, give or take, job fairs around the country with our strategic partner, Recruit Military. We sponsor all of their career fairs, but 125 is the schedule. We have 140 total. Those other 15 are virtual career fairs, which we do with Recruit Military, which are outstanding. They have a nice platform. We're not new to the virtual career fair arena, but it's a great way for those folks that we don't go into their community or they're nearby or it's too hard for them, so they can come in. It's a good way that they can talk to the number of employers that are on that day and still take part in it. But yeah, we have a full schedule ahead of us.
And I noticed this with a lot of them. I mean, you go through the schedule and some of these areas just make sense. You know, a lot of them are pretty decent sized cities. Then you see things like Travis Air Force Base, Fort Bragg, Fort Bliss, Camp Pendleton. It looks like there's a pretty concerted effort there being made.
Yeah, in the beginning, when we started sponsoring these and working with the career fairs was back in mid-2014. We didn't have any base events. Recruit Military, which later Bradley Morris had acquired them, they had a large military base presence. it was very exciting for us because we have our transition service officers located on many installations around the country. For us to simply just go in and say, hey, we want to do a career fair, wasn't really possible because every base is different, every command is different. And it was just hard. But that's one of the things Bradley Morris brought to the table walking through the door, which worked really well with a lot of those locations that we have. Take Fort Bragg. We have a great our transition service officers across the board are great.
These are the folks who are helping veterans make that bridge. Get their benefits on their way out. Mm-hmm. They're connecting them.
Yeah, this is transition service officers we didn't always have them in DAV. We always had that want and need to be at the very entry point or separation point, if you will, when leaving the military. To talk about them about not just DAV's services as a whole, but also to drill down and go a little deeper. We need to make sure your benefits are taken care of rather than waiting to get home and go talk to a national service officer, which still is the case for many, but having transition service officers, certainly, many of them participate in separation briefings on those military bases. They can review their medical records. They can do everything and file everything before they leave. The one thing they didn't have, because we didn't have the program at that point, was, helping those individuals kind of get them started in the right path for careers following military service. So that said, our transition service officers are now able to address that employment. Hey, what are you going to do when you leave? Not everybody getting out of the military is entitled to or will be wanting to pursue a claim for disability benefits. It's a fact. Not everybody wants to get involved with it. Not
at first.
Not at first. Not everybody. They all believe in volunteering and they all want to give their time, but not everybody's going to do it.
Yeah.
So you can push volunteerforveterans.org. It's going to affect them at a particular juncture in their life or point in their life. Not everybody getting out believes in grassroots lobbying or wants to get involved, even though the DAV Commanders Action Network is so easy to get involved with everything that we have.
DAVCan.org.
Yeah, DAV
well
Can.
Played.
Not everybody there wants to get involved, but it's so easy. We've made those types of things so easy. But the overwhelming majority of people getting out of the military is going to look for a job, that next career.
Right.
That to me really kind of nails the importance of having this program. We all know the importance of the employment program, helping those individuals, whether it's the veteran or a spouse, helping them transition beyond military is important. Career fairs just being one of those ways of bringing it to them or making the opportunity available to them.
We have all the fairs. You can find them on jobs.dav.org.
All right, man, another episode here wrapping up in the books of the DAV podcast. And as always, having a good time here, bringing you our mission in a new way with the DAV podcast. If you like what you heard today, we invite you to do a couple things. One, you want to subscribe to the podcast. You can do that on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify as well. Get it anytime. DAV.org podcast. If you like what you heard today around our Camp Corral, you can always check out more information there as well. JustBeKids.org and DAV.org. That's the place where you go. If you're a veteran that needs help, you want to check out that upcoming job fair schedule, learn about some volunteer opportunities here, or you just want to help us help veterans, you can donate there as well. Lots of ways to help. DAV.org, the place to do it. Ashley, 2 episodes in the book. We're very excited about that, but episode 3 could maybe even be one of our best ones yet. We're going to talk a little National Disabled Veterans Winter Sports Clinic.
I know. I feel like we're kind of on the upswing here. We're just moving right along up in the hockey stick formation. But National Disabled Veterans Winter Sports Clinic is one of my absolute favorite times of the year. It's one of the best events that we do. DAV co-hosts this event with the VA. It is Miracles on a Mountainside. We're taking hundreds of disabled veterans out to Aspen, out to Snowmass, Colorado, and really showing them what their capabilities are, giving them the opportunity to break through boundaries and barriers through a bunch of different sporting events. And it's just so uplifting. And we have so much great stuff to share with you next time.
So stick around. Episode 3 coming your way very soon. But that's all the time we have for today. For Ashley Burns, all of us here at DAV, I'm Dan Klaskins. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time right here on the DAV Podcast.